who says what identifies as a public figure? What is a standard to be a public figure?
Well, there's no real standard right now. What this bill is trying to do is create that one to say, like, elected officials obviously, appointed officials obviously, people who are engaged in thought leadership on issues of actual public importance. Those people are public figures. But people who, like the bill delves into specifically like why Nick Sandmann should have never been called a public figure by any media outlet when he was only famous for being defamed. Like, that's what the bill's trying to do, is provide that clarity. And that's the other thing, is like in child support, we have guidelines.
Right.
And we have guidelines, and because of those guidelines, we don't have litigation in child support. Like the main goals of alimony reform for the past several years is to get alimony to the same level as child support to head off a lot of that litigation. When you provide that clarity in statute in otherwise areas where you have a ton of judicial discretion, that's an incentive to file suit. Like, by providing those guidelines, you know exactly what to expect if you bring that suit. Like, those guidelines, I've never seen them incentivize litigation. They always do the opposite.
Will the bill specifically state who's a public figure?
Yeah, the bill does.
Okay, what is a media, like for myself, a media personality, am I considered a public figure?
Like, but are you talking, well, the public figure doesn't matter if you're the defendant. Public figure only matters if you're the plaintiff.
Right. Let's just say if I'm the plaintiff, am I considered...
So if someone defames you.
Right.
Okay, so if someone defames you, depending on what they say about you, you could be considered a limited public figure. It depends on what they're saying about you. Like, as a, like if you write a story about somebody else having, like, let's say like you have like a long history of like financial fraud and white collar crime, and you write about somebody else having a long history of financial fraud and white collar crime, okay, and that person brings up your history but also like expands it. Talks, like, accuses you of the same thing and says this is hypocritical, this guy wrote a story about this, when look at his background. If it's defamatory what they said about you, like, you would probably be considered a public figure in that circumstance if you're bringing the suit. But like, media companies right now, even if you're a private individual, media companies will try and say the standard has to be actual malice. They want to try and force everyone, no matter how private, no matter like how little they've ever subjected themselves to public discourse. They want to say that we can defame anyone with impunity, and they have to meet this actual malice, recklessness standard to get us. To get us.
So you're saying now it's, instead of proving malice, it has to be proven either malice or just simple neglect?
The three common law standards of liability have always been intentional, reckless, and negligent torts. For hundreds of years, before America was a country, the standard for defamation was negligence. What Sullivan said was, if you're a public figure, the standard is slightly higher than recklessness. That's all Sullivan said. The issue was because they created this like fourth, like, judicial discretion dependent standard of liability for defamation specifically, it's become this nearly impossible burden for anyone to overcome. But again, the worst result in all of this for anybody, regardless of circumstance, like the worst day for anybody would mean that a public figure just has to prove that they were negligent when they were defamed. The defendant was negligent when they were defamed. That's it. Like that's the worst case scenario for anybody. It's like, if you have a public figure like me who doesn't have to prove recklessness or higher, I can just say they were negligent, but I still have to prove I was defamed. I have to prove that there was a lie about me that hurt me.
And again, that being said, it's almost like you can sue, pretty much anyone can sue anyone, and now you're saying there's a criteria, like, hey, you're going to get hit with a frivolous lawsuit if you file it, but it still has to go through the rigors of the court system, and money is going to be expended on both sides.
It has to right now. The only difference is that this bill would have guidelines that we don't have right now.
Okay.
And I've never seen an example where guidelines in that circumstance increase the rate of litigation. And I have evidence that it does the opposite.